Good morning. Welcome to Lead 2015. That's pretty good, isn't it? 87. We'll come back to that. I'm Tim Lefroy, and welcome to this, the fourth episode of UK Advertising's program of summits, where you seasoned hands will know that this is where you, the industry leaders, come together to lead and to shape the AA's agenda. And the new folks will learn that you have to join in. And prepare today to be provoked, to be stimulated, even to hear things with which you might disagree, or which might make you uncomfortable. And that's the difference between a summit and a conference. It's a brave agenda. So please prepare to join in. You've got the technology in your hands, and I'm sorry, but you've got to give those tablets back at the end of the meeting. But meanwhile, you can vote, you can ask questions, you can give feedback, you can take private notes, you can even tweet, but not on that device. You'll have to do that separately, and the hashtag is Lead2015. And do we have the video? So that's our challenge today. That video showed two contrasting views of advertising. On the one hand, cynical, manipulative, reckless, and irresponsible. On the other, and I'll take a little bit of credit on behalf of the hard work of the AA team on this, the view of others, ministers, commentators, ambassadors, making the case for advertising's value to the economy, to business, to people, and to society. It's the force for good view we'd like our political leaders to have. But we start this morning with the question, should you, the leaders of UK advertising, actually be sitting comfortably? And I'd start by suggesting maybe the answer's not entirely. We're 98 days from a general election. We have a new European Parliament in place with all its circus, finding its feet and deciding exactly what lines to draw. And here the political battle lines are being drawn, and advertising is far from being immune to all of that. We are hardwired to the competition agenda. We're a very public component in popular capitalism. We attract strong points of view. We depend on and value our advertising self-regulation, but we have to remember that it's a privilege, not a right. And it can be chipped away at the edges. And the evidence is that the Advertising Association and the Front Foot Group in particular has done a good job over the life of this government on one particular dimension. We've grown the awareness and understanding of the AA itself with the political leaders, and via the hard work of Karen and James and via AdPage 2, we've driven the appreciation of advertising's economic contribution. And here's the number. 81% of MPs now agree that advertising is an important driver of the economy. However, the stats on the responsibility agenda are much less reassuring. When we ask MPs whether advertising is in touch with its responsibilities, that agreement drops by more than half. And that finding is significant because if an activity is not seen by policymakers as responsible, then they, the politicians, are much more likely to want to interfere. And UK advertising is very lucky to have the ASA, which in our tracking suggests is still seen as an effective regulator working on the side of the consumer. But there are all around us worrying signals. Some of you would have seen the government's announcement last week that the UK will enforce the plain packaging of cigarettes. It might have passed some of you by. After all, not many of us are at all interested in advertising fags anymore. It's long gone. But we should take note because the evidence for that move is actually very poor, and there's a principle there. Cigarettes today, perhaps alcohol, food next. There are people here from the gambling sector, which right now is being bullied by government with threats of legislation, possibly imposing watershed bans on free bet advertising. Some of you might think, hey, quite right too. There's too much of it, it's all over the place, and the sector should have got its act together earlier. But maybe we should be a bit embarrassed that a 600% increase in advertising volume since deregulation has brought the government to the table with potentially anti-competitive remedies that could override advertising's self-regulatory system and the evidence base. So it's not gambling that's being attacked, it's advertising freedoms in that particular case. And the list goes on. Where was advertising's voice in the furore on payday loans until Wonga's new chairman voluntarily pulled their campaign? We saw e-cigarettes allowed onto TV screens with people vaping for the first time, only for the ASA to ban 2 out of the 3 first commercials. How did that happen? In case you've missed it, the knives are now back out again for high-fat, salt and sugar foods and children. New research out from this week from the British Heart Foundation. I think we might touch on that later. And to complete this catalogue of gloom, just when we thought we were sort of safe to go back in the water, getting somewhere on the European debate on data and privacy, news from the USA last week about a new super cookie, which, guess what? When you delete it, leaves something behind in your system. Thanks very much, Verizon. So it was in this context, a year ago, we welcomed Andy Duncan as the new president of the Advertising Association. And it's been Andy's wisdom that's elevated a single part of the agenda. And in a word, it's responsibility.